Thank you. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar about the new book, New Economy 3.0, Sustainable Macroeconomics with Green Rendit. So my name is Gustaf-Wilhelm Hellstedt. I'm the Vice President of the #1 Club, also called the TNOC, and today's moderator. The event is organized through the Sidonia Business Club, and the book is written under the patronage of the European organization Eureka. What the book is about in more details you will get from the different keynote speakers of today. But this book is already compared with Limits of Growth that was commissioned by the Club of Rome already in 1972 it was published. And that's a book that's been printed in 30 million copies in 30 languages. With that said, I have a few pointers for today's event. Please make sure that your microphones are turned off. We don't want to interfere with the speakers, so it's out of respect to all of us and especially to our speakers. Secondly, this webinar is, as said, being recorded and will be accessible in a few days on the Sidonia Business Club's Facebook page. This is especially important since two of our today's speakers will be presenting in German, and their presentations will be texted afterwards. Also, their speeches will be summarized here after each presentation by Dr. Peter Platzer. Third, just to inform you, we are being broadcasted in several platforms today on Zoom, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So, all right, with all of that said, we now start today's webinar. So let me introduce to you our first speaker of today, the Vice-Chancellor and the previous head of Austrian Public Party, Josef Riegler. He will talk to us about the Eco-Social Forum, initiated some 30 years ago, and his involvement also with the Paris climate goals, economy and ecology. Herzlich willkommen, Vice-Chancellor Riegler. Wir freuen uns auf Ihre Worte zum heutigen Thema. Bitte schön, Herr Vice-Chancellor.
Ladies and gentlemen, everywhere in the world, thank you for the invitation. And thank you, Peter, for the possibility to speak in German. It's more comfortable to explain some issues. But at first, I will try to bring the main message in English. Ladies and gentlemen, the most important objective of the eco-social market economy is balance. Balance between a competitive market economy and an effective social solidarity in our societies. And the third point, with a successful protection of environment and climate. On this way, we can achieve balance between mankind and nature, between North and South, between the richer and poorer parts of our societies. And I believe this could be the foundation for a peaceful and sustainable development. Nun möchte ich versuchen, in Deutsch dieses Projekt etwas näher zu erläutern. Können wir die Grafik? Geht nicht. Okay. Es geht darum, dass wir eine Balance erreichen zwischen einer leistungsfähigen, wettbewerbsstarken Wirtschaft, sozialer Solidarität und dem Schutz von Umwelt und Klima. Für eine leistungsfähige Wirtschaft brauchen wir bestmögliche Bildung, Ausbildung und Forschung. Brauchen wir Anreize für Leistung, Innovation und Investments. Und wir brauchen fairen Wettbewerb. Das ist gerade angesichts einer globalen Ökonomie äußerst wichtig. Der zweite Punkt, soziale Solidarität, sozialer Friede. Gerade die Corona-Pandemie zeigt uns, wie wichtig ein leistungsfähiger Staat ist. Für ein robustes Gesundheitssystem, aber auch dafür, dass die Wirtschaft und Arbeitnehmer durch diese Krise getragen werden können. Ein leistungsfähiger Staat braucht ein faires System von Steuern und Abgaben. Das heißt, alle sollen sich nach ihrer Leistungsfähigkeit einbringen. Und der dritte und entscheidende Punkt ist der wirksame Schutz unseres Lebensraumes und unseres Klimas. Das ist das Wichtigste und auch das Neue im Konzept der ökosozialen Marktwirtschaft. Vor 30 Jahren habe ich dieses Projekt gestartet und ich habe damals das Motto gewählt: Lasst den Markt die Umwelt schützen. Das heißt, es geht darum, die Dynamik des Marktes zu nutzen, um Umweltschutz und Klimaschutz auf bestmöglichen Weg zu erreichen. Dafür müssen Preise und Kosten dem Markt und der Wirtschaft die richtigen Signale geben. Es geht also um Kostenwahrheit. Preise und Kosten müssen die ökologische Wahrheit wiedergeben. Es geht um Verursacherprinzip. Das heißt, wer belastet, soll auch dafür aufkommen. Und es geht darum, auf intelligente Weise Steuern und Abgaben so umzubauen, dass sie der Nachhaltigkeit dienen. Zusammengefasst, das Ziel ist, dass wir das, was für die Zukunft wichtig ist, was für die Zukunft notwendig ist, dass wir das wirtschaftlich möglichst attraktiv machen. Die momentan größte Herausforderung sehe ich in der drohenden Klimakatastrophe. Zwischen 1900 und 2015 hat die Menschheit durch die Verbrennung fossiler Energieträger etwa 1500 Milliarden Tonnen CO2 zusätzlich zu den natürlichen Kreisläufen in die Atmosphäre emittiert. Die Folge ist, dass der Anteil von CO2 in der Atmosphäre, der durch hunderttausende Jahre zwischen 250 und 300 Parts per Million gelegen ist, sprunghaft auf über 400 Parts per Million angestiegen ist. Und daher droht eine Erderhitzung, die in weiten Teilen unseres Planeten Leben zerstören könnte. Das heißt, wenn wir auch für die Zukunft gute Lebensbedingungen sichern wollen, müssen wir hier handeln. Ich habe schon erwähnt, vor 30 Jahren habe ich dieses Projekt Ökosoziale Marktwirtschaft gestartet. Ganz entscheidend war 2003 die Gründung der Initiative Global Marshall Plan für eine weltweite ökosoziale Marktwirtschaft. Mit diesem Projekt ist es uns gelungen, bei vielen Regierungen, Parlamenten bis hin zur UNO einen Diskussionsprozess in Gang zu bringen. Und nach der großen Finanzkrise 2008 hat der Internationale Währungsfonds erklärt, ungezügelte Märkte, sondern das Problem. Das heißt, alle globalen Institutionen von UNO über G20, OECD gingen auf die Suche nach einem neuen, besseren Modell für die globalisierte Wirtschaft. Und sie haben sich verständigt auf ein Konzept, das sie Green and Inclusive Economy genannt haben. Dieses Modell ist identisch mit dem Konzept der ökosozialen Marktwirtschaft, denn es geht um Economic Sustainability, Social Sustainability und Environmental Sustainability. Das zusammengefasst ergibt Sustainable Development. Und auf diesem Konzept aufbauend hat die Staatengemeinschaft 2015 zwei ganz entscheidende Beschlüsse gefasst. Erstens die Sustainable Development Goals oder Agenda 2030, UNO-Generalversammlung im September 2015. und zweitens der Klimavertrag von Paris. Das sind zwei globale Projekte, die ich für die Zukunft für ganz entscheidend halte. Und nun geht es darum, diese Konzepte in konkrete Taten umzusetzen. Und zwar auf allen Ebenen, von der persönlichen Lebensführung bis hin zu einer funktionsfähigen Global Governance. Und aus all den Erfahrungen, die ich gemacht habe, kann ich sagen, ich glaube, dass das Konzept der ökosozialen Marktwirtschaft, dieses Konzept der Balance zwischen leistungsfähiger Wirtschaft, sozialer Solidarität und Schutz von Umwelt und Klima oder wie es international heißt, Green and Inclusive Economy, ein wertvolles Instrument ist, um dieses Ziel zu erreichen. Dankeschön.
All right, thank you very, very much, Vice-Chancellor Riegler, for your presentation. Highly appreciated. We are so very grateful for your participation here today. Vielen Dank. I will now let Dr. Peter Platzer make a short summary. Dr. Platzer is the Secretary General for Eureka HQ in Brussels. He's also a specialist for turnaround management for startups in the field of proprietary technology. After his summary, he will also be our next keynote speaker for the day, talking about the composition of the and timetable of the book. And he will also, of course, get a little bit into printing money is not enough. Dr. Platzer, if you would be so kind.
Good afternoon from here, Sidonia Castle, a daughter company of the Sanders Holding, where the Sidonia Business Club is located. For me, it is a good opportunity to start with my keynote to summarize the message of Senator Riegler. Here we are able to see that someone with his experience and knowledge can reduce the complexity of the fields of competitive economy, of social solidarity in our society, and finally the necessity to protect our environment, because we all know this globus, the earth, it's only borrowed from us, from the next generation. And with his knowledge and his position inside the European Union, he was able directly to influence the Paris climate goals from the so-called Global Marshall Plan, which was supported by him and his team and developed many years ago, before we all were able to see the importance of our environment. And the book is really based on the eco-social forum idea of the 80s and early 90s. And it's also based on the second school of Austrian macroeconomics. Therefore, we are going into the new economy 3.0, sustainability macroeconomics with Green Rendit. And as Gustaf-Wilhelm said right before, the book has a logical structure. The timetable leads from one part to the next part. The first part of the book, it's dedicated to the existing economic theories and what is relevant to solve the economic crisis of nowadays. The second part of the book, it's an impact of the first part, because the economic theory leads to different economic policies. And we were searching which part of economic policy we have to know that the last 80 years, 40 years were dedicated to the Keynesianism. And we have had in Austria the special form of Austrian Keynesianism. The next 40 years were the world of the neoliberalism. And we have to ask what is relevant nowadays. And we will see we have to take from both sides what is needed. A deregulation of the state, but on the other side, like the Vice-Chancellor said right before, only a strong state, a strong macroeconomic will be able to solve the impact of the pandemic. In the third chapter, part of the book, we are checking all existing axioms of the Nobel Prize winner in the field of macroeconomics and business. And we will ask us again, what is relevant nowadays? And we have to accept that only few axioms are still relevant nowadays. The work of Nordhaus or the work of Paul Romer, for example. In the fourth part, we will take a look into the history, and we are able to see economic crises are accompanying the society over generations, over centuries. The first crisis was starting in the Middle Ages in the territorium of Italy. We all know the terminus technicus Lombard credit, which is coming from the region of Lombardy. And then later on, in the 17th century, we have the Tulpmania, where you can buy 2 houses in Amsterdam if the tulps have red stripes inside the flower. We can learn a lot of all these misunderstandings, and we can learn over the centuries how we are successfully as a society able to survive in economic terms. This was the fourth part. In the fifth part of the book, we take a view on the different authorities, the local authorities, the regional authorities, the national authorities, the multinational authorities, and the global authorities. And we ask ourselves, which kind of institution are giving the frame for our generation right now? And we ask ourselves why such important organizations like Amnesty International, World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace are not on the level of United Nations sister organizations that they can do their worthwhile job easier. In the sixth part, we are taking a look inside the institutions and the different authorities about the people in economic terms, the households, the businessmen, the investors, the Chamber of Commerce, the labor forces, the labor unions, and so on. In the seventh part of the book, we are thinking what we heard ongoing. This is the greatest crisis since 1945. But the politicians are not comparing the different social cultural patterns of the society of 1945 and the society nowadays. In 1945, the people were searching for a living place, for a job, and during the 50s, maybe once per year, vacancies in Italy. Nowadays, we are all calculating our work-life balance, and we have a lot of other aspects valuing our life, and the dynamic is much more greater. And on these shoulders, for this generation and for the next generation, only billions of euros, which has to be paid back. With all these understandings about social cultural patterns, moral philosophical understandings of this generation, we are coming to the eighth part of the book, and this is speaking about sustainability macroeconomics with Green Rendit, which is founding a third school of macroeconomics in Austria, so-called New Economy 3.0. And in the last part, we take the chance to look deeper into this century until the end of this century. we have tried to do scientific research what the future will bring to us. And now I'm remind myself on the invitation of the TNOC club that printing money is not enough. And this will lead me to my last comments, to my keynote, that we all have to know that the European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve are in a similar situation, around 7 trillion passiva in their balance sheet. And I only want to point out, because my time is limited as well, and all others also have relevant to tell to you and to the audience, that if you take from the European Union, the 18 countries belonging to the Eurozone, the accumulated gross national product is around 10 trillions. Before the pandemic, the so-called seigniorage capital of the European Central Bank was 4.7 trillion. And now we have 7 trillions, which means with this policy, we will be in May next year close to the 10 trillion accumulated gross national product of all countries inside the European Union. And this will lead all of us in a hyperinflation. And the United States are in the same situation, but they have 3 times more seigniorage capital because they have the petrodollar and they have a lot of other countries which are dealing their economy in US dollar. There will be a lot more to tell to you, but maybe in the discussion panel afterwards, I have the chance to answer one or the other aspect. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Platzer. Thank you for your presentation and also for your summary of Vice-Chancellor Riegler's presentation. This was highly interesting, highly interesting. We have a few challenges in front of us. And now we move over to our next speaker for the day, and that will be Lord Rothschild, who is President of Eureka Israel, Vice President of African Rating Agency. Lord Rothschild is also responsible for family offices inside the Rothschild family and is a specialist for crude oil, interesting in these circumstances, and other commodities as well as for foreign exchange transactions. We will hear a little about the change of mindset in the US and the impact during the pandemic and after the pandemic. So, my lord, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. How are you? I really would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here today to speak on a different aspect. On the mindset. Most of us have always heard economics, education, but we never get to the root of the issue. And I feel that the administrative intolerance, the destruction of the mindset as a whole of society is going to be a gross downfall in the United States and throughout the world. Most of our governments have become a totalitarian government, depleting all their resources to only find that in the end, we're going to be a century behind than where we were pre-COVID. And when I want to discuss about mindset, I don't want to demonstrate any disrespect to the United States. I feel that the United States of America has already grossly disrespected themselves by their current policies. And when I say so, 40 years back, Europe had a struggle through trade with the United States of America. The United States of America had extreme growth where European countries suffered from lack of opportunity. In 2020, we saw a mindset deteriorate in the United States, whether it had been through fascist groups, Marxist allegations such as Antifa, Black Lives Matters, white supremacists, defunding police departments, law enforcement, to where it created chaos. We cannot correct chaos with the same mindset that was used to create it in the first place. I'm not here to discuss whether or not COVID is real or not real. It's obviously a pandemic, whether it's a medical pandemic, a mental pandemic, or a systematic pandemic that's causing a great injustice. I would like to take the opportunity today to say that the greatest obstacle that the world as a whole needs to come together is to experience love. Currently, certain groups that are viewed as the elite, people who are educated, people of systemic wealth, are being accused of doing this. I'll be the first one to say that it's not. It's the quasi-elite, the power-grabbing, totalitarian force that wants to utilize fear. In my opinion, fear is an unneeded mindset. It is false evidence appearing real. Once we get over the concept of self-growth utilizing love rather than fear, we can initiate the growth of education, medical, economics, and reestablish the world trade markets, especially in Western European countries, would be easier to move, and then begin to focus on the Eastern European countries that have the greatest ability to initiate industrial form, but the lack of ability due to mindset and decades of oppression. Throughout this book, we talk about economics, we talk about growth, we talk about green energy, we talk about different aspects that I prefer to allow the other authors to speak upon. At this point, I believe that mindset is going to be the greatest thing. If you can believe something after you conceive it, you can definitely achieve it. Throughout the world, many people are haves and have-nots. I believe more people could be haves if they would just be able to focus on the abilities of the positive aspects rather than always focus on the negative. As a society, we find many people who come in the form of bringing light, bringing education, but there's a huge, tremendous offset between intelligence and education. I think once we start reforming the education of society, and society can become to believe in themselves, we'll begin to understand exactly where we are. Because to understand where we're going, we have to know where we came from. In my brief chapter of mindset, I was discussing currently the fascist groups with the preoccupation of enlightened thoughts and intentions. But in actuality, the offset is economic shutdown, less education, schools have been shut down. We have removed the religious aspect of society. So once you remove the moral factors of society, whichever religion someone chooses to claim to be theirs, you see a instant degrade in the communities. So once you eliminated the initiative of having a moral factor, you eliminate the initiative of growth. And it's sad to say that most of our world leaders, our government officials, fail to realize that their existence depends on the resources and revenue generated through either taxation, capitalism, or potential growth. By shutting down the economies, we've eliminated the world trade to a standstill. Now, I believe in green energy, but what I do not believe in is the intolerance of capitalism, because that finance, that money for these projects have to derive from somewhere. So a lot of individuals throughout the planet have been indoctrinated to believe that making money is a terrible situation. I'm here to say, without it, you have nothing. Money needs to be viewed as a tool, not an object. I think once we can start establishing the true possibilities of freedom, because freedom is a state of mind, true justice, love, reestablish order, the rule of law, the law of the land, start instituting the voice of reason, peace, abundance, charity. Again, it is impossible to facilitate charity if you don't have the resources to begin with. I understand by what I wrote throughout my chapter may initiate some hostility from some individuals on this world in society. It is my belief that the word "anity" is just the formulation of an accepted ideology, such as sanity or insanity. So we have many individuals that come in the name of the elite or quasi-elite that say they want to focus on restoring humanity. In actuality, humanity, in my opinion, is the mindset of the human factor. So I had to ask myself, do they want to restore peace and humanity? Or is it that they're looking to regain control of the human factor? I would never speak for the entire planet. I spend most of my life being a Rothschild, getting blamed for most of the atrocities that were instilled on this planet. I'm here to say firsthand, without any uncertainty, first, as a Jewish race that has been oppressed over many, many, many centuries, much less millenniums, we believe in one world possibilities for peace. Through that peace, we have to establish a level balance for everyone. It is our goal to see that each person has the freedom to succeed. And the only difference between a have and a have not is the way they process and be able to perform. Most of the world believes that because you live in some demographics, that you're entitled. I'm here to say today, everyone has the same opportunity as long as we apply a thing called meritocracy. And I apologize to the other speakers for going over my time, and thank everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Rothschild. Interesting point of views, of course. I would just say that if you don't know where you're going, how will you ever know when you have arrived? And I will also take this opportunity to remind the audience that they can post their questions in the chat to be answered after the different presentations are done. So thank you again, Lord Rothschild. We swiftly move over to our fourth speaker of the day. We will now hear from the president of Eureka, Russia, Mr. Vladimir Efimov, who is well experienced and established networker in and for the Russian Federation. His family, I believe, was previously leading the aluminum business in the Russian Federation. He will, he will today address us with a talk about how Russia handled the pandemic compared to the rest of the world, and what will be the position of Russia in post-pandemic scenario. Давай, добро пожаловать Welcome, Mr. Efimov.
Work now? Yep. My name is Vladimir Efimov, represent my colleagues. Thank you very much. I'm the member of Eureka, Russia. Thank you for letting me a little speech about the situation with the COVID-19. As everywhere, pandemic starts the year and a half ago. And like everywhere in the world, we've got the strong lockdown. All citizens must to sit home. To make glossary, you must make SMS for the organs which let you come out from your home only 2 times a week. If you will go the 3rd time, you will pay for the government to $200. For our citizens, you must understand it's big money. We've got this situation only for 5 months. After this situation, we've got the first vaccine. Everybody know, I think it's named Sputnik V. For today, we've got 6 vaccines. Yesterday, our government represent the latest one. It's called Sputnik Light. It's like the Sputnik V, but you must make only 1 vaccine. Sputnik V, you must make 2 times. For today, every vaccine in our country is free. You can get in any big malls or shopping centers or hospitals, and you can make it for free at every time you want. But the situation is very strange in our country. Our government must to interest everybody to make it. Nobody, the half of population of Moscow and Russia, I think thinking that it's not true that COVID-19 is real. Like me, I've got the COVID-19 the year before, and it was bad for my health, and a lot of my friends got it and partners. And for nowadays, we've got only 6% of vaccinated. And you must understand that 2% of these 6% are the government. For first, everybody must to go and make a vaccine. And the half of these 2% is our army. Everybody must to make a vaccine in our army. Otherwise, the situation in Moscow is very strange too. That was pandemic. When it was pandemic, you must sit home, you understand, and this and etc. But nowadays, it's only 6% of vaccinated people in whole Russia, but everything like before. We've got all restaurants, all theaters, all sports events open for everybody. After this winter, we've got restrict only for 20% of seats in every big citizen event. Nowadays, we've got all 100%, and everybody is living like the normal life before. It's crazy, seriously, because we've got the 2nd wave at winter. Nowadays, I think it will be the 3rd wave, because nobody wants to make vaccine, but starting living like a normal life before. I think our government must make information of people like they are trying to do now by the television or radio station, etc. But the situation is not like in Israel, for example. So, for example, where I know that around 90% of citizens made the vaccine. The economic situation, but people don't understand that if you will not make the vaccine, the situation will come like in summer of the last year, and it will be the 3rd wave, which will harm the business like before. Because for all this time, our government made the payments for our citizens who've got the little or middle business. Thank you, Daniel, sorry. And For nowadays, everything is open, every big manufacturers and etc. But we've got the strict rules that everybody must make the offices not full of 30%. That's why we've got the system of working 2 people in one cabinet, and also directors or our employees and etc. The manufacturers making more technic and robotics things for making the glossary or something else, or Cooper and etc. And we've got a lot of free employees now, because the situation is bad in the world and also in our country with COVID-19. I hope for the brightest future of this year or the next year, we will fight this disaster and make the situation like a year and a half ago, and everything will live like a normal life before. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. If you've got a question, write in chat.
All right. Spasiba, Vladimir, Efimov.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Highly interesting, as with all our speakers today. So now, where are we? We have reached to our 5th speaker of the day, and it is no less than the president of Eureka HQ Brussels, Dr. Werner Strahalm, a former politician, historian, also owner of a publishing house, and we will now learn what history can show us. History has a tendency to repeat itself. Don't you all agree? And Dr. Strahalm will address us in German. So Dr. Platzer will give us a summary after the presentation. And also in the recorded video later on, it will be a texted version of this presentation. Bitte schön, Dr. Strahalm.
Hello.
The microphone is yours.
Hello, many greetings from Graz, the capital of the Green Heart of Austria. I am the publisher of this book. And it's possible to speak in German. And so I go on in German. Es war eine Arbeit von mehr als einem Jahr, dass dieses Buch in dieser Qualität erscheinen kann. Es hat mehr als 500 Seiten und bildet einen Bogen von der Vergangenheit über die Gegenwart bis in die Zukunft. Da ich an und für sich ein gelernter Historiker bin, würde ich auch sagen, dass das Buch nicht nur in den Bereich der Ökonomie hineinspielt, was eigentlich der tiefere Grund ist, sondern auch in den Bereich der Geschichtsphilosophie. Weil, wie das Buch aufgebaut ist, passt es genau zu diesen Thesen. Denn es ist nicht genug, historische Kausalität zu betrachten, sondern die Gegenwart ist in ihrem Verhältnis zu einer bestimmten Vergangenheit zu erfassen und kann erst so als Jetztzeit begriffen werden. Es war ja schon alles einmal da. Die Jetztzeit ist eigentlich nur eine Zusammenfassung der gesamten Menschheitsgeschichte. Wenn wir jetzt da schauen, ich habe zum Beispiel über Tulpenmania, diese Finanzkrise im 17. Jahrhundert, meinen Artikel verfasst. Es war eine Spekulationsblase, die da geplatzt ist. Jetzt würde ich sagen, in der Gegenwart gibt es eine Tesla-Mania. Daher meine ich, das Buch ist wirklich absolut gleichwertig wie die Veröffentlichung Grenzen des Wachstums von Gustaf-Wilhelm. Und es wird hoffentlich genauso viele Leser finden und begeistern wie eben dieses Buch. Also das war eigentlich mein Statement, kurz und bündig als Historiker und als Verleger. Ich danke schön.
All right, thank you very much. Vielen Dank, Dr. Schramm, für diese historische Einsicht. Dr. Platzer, if you would be so kind.
Of course, thank you, Werner Stahlhelm, for again introducing the book. On the beginning, you said, as an historian, you are convinced that this book not only was able to catch economic interests, it is also able in the structure to catch philosophical, historical research and science. Because you are able, and we are all sharing with you this point of view, that history is repeating always the events of the past. And the present time, it's the summary of what happens before. And we all have to ask ourselves why we are not able and sometimes willing to learn from the past. And therefore, you gave the sample about the tulp mania, that in the early 17th century, you can buy with 1 or 2 tulps several houses. And you were speaking about Tesla mania, because someone is promising to us to bring us to the Mars, or to the Bitcoins, where we all know it's a big challenge for the governments and the central banks not to cause with fiat money a hyperinflation, as we have had as single phenomenons after the First World War in Austria and Germany. And we are all knowing to which realities this dramatic period leading us, or after the Second World War in Hungary with a tremendous inflation. And we have had from 1945 till to the early 1970s, the so-called Bretton Woods Agreement, where the nation has to underline their quantity of money with gold reserves. And now we have artificial currencies only with a vision, what is the worth of it? And therefore, Dr. Stahlhelm was telling to us directly, indirectly, in December 2020, Bitcoins were the question if they are reaching 20,000 euros. And some months later, the value was 60,000. And so the question is if we are able to learn from our history, and this was the message of Dr. Stahlhelm.
All right, thank you schön, Dr. Platzer, for the summary. Now to something slightly different. We will now welcome Mr. Guy van der Beken, Vice President of Eureka HQ Brussels. Mr. van der Beken was for several decades responsible for Eureka Brussels, and he is a strongly experienced businessman for international trading and networking. He will today be talking about the Green Deal of the European market. Mr. van der Beken, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Guy van der Beken. I was born in Belgium and I'm Flemish. Flemish is my mother language. When I was a little boy, my father took me in the 60s for the first time to Eureka, the International Invention Exhibition. It was a new world for me to see how people were busy with adaptations and innovations of existing systems. More than 500 inventions shown with pride by the inventors and in an exhibition hall in the center of Brussels. 20 years later, I became the technical manager for the same exhibition hall to organize congresses and fairs of all kinds, like the Eureka Fair. In the 90s, I was a partner and president of the international jury for Eureka, And it was very interesting to see how many inventions were based on saving our planet. I was traveling to several countries and continents to invite universities and associations to join the Eureka in Brussels. So many universities doing so much effort to explore and expand the use of treasures of the planet, what we call raw materials. Surely not with the intention to change the climate, but to make life easier, comfortable, to keep nature greener, water potable, the air where the sky and the sun will always shine. 50 years later, we still, but we created climate change. That's why the European Commission created a strategy where environmental, economic, and social sustainability are the key to the Green Deal, because for too long, sustainability had been uncoordinated. Financial crises were over since we reached the highest levels of employment due to our common currency and positive macroeconomics numbers, but social injustice due to unfair distribution of the benefits of growth created insecurity, fear, disruption, and loss by previous crises in all levels of politics. The Green Deal is there to change direction of growth in the, but a virus turned growth negative in the shortest terms. People's priorities have changed, but the climate crisis has already one foot in the door. The European Union will spend trillions to help reboot the economy, and the leaders agreed that at least 30% should be spent in our climate objectives. The money we use now is money borrowed from the next generations. And to overcome the COVID crisis, we need expansionary macroeconomic policies. A new Green Deal can offer double dividend. And of course, money will be spent on the immediate priorities, but also thinking of energy efficient renovations, global industrial leadership, and hydrogen economy are also the top priorities. I am afraid, but nearly convinced, that the pandemic crisis will be used to explain the financial problems that we are facing. And in fact, those problems are a result of the system that was set up after World War II and was already coming to an end in 2007. But with the Lehman Brothers crash, we see the gap between the quality of money and the fiscal deficit. Does it mean that all what we learned in the 20th century has to be changed? Sustainable finance can be the solution in times of crisis to boost the durable mobilization of private funds to help the economy achieve the climate goals. I remember that I was wearing a t-shirt with the saying, "No time to waste," in the 80s. 40 years later, I have the same message. And we have no choice but to act now, to develop new technologies and to ensure their costs come down. If we wait any longer, choice will be forced upon us. These choices will be far more painful and far more unjust to humanity. When the gasoline price will be higher, we should not wait for transport or heating bills to rise before we start the renovations of an energy-efficient global system. Our response to the actual crisis gives us the opportunity to save jobs for decades to come and create new jobs. The debt we are loading on the shoulders of our children and our grandchildren makes it even more necessary to ensure we provide them with a better, cleaner, healthier, and fairer future. We have the power and the commitment to succeed, and no matter how much we are part of the actual cause, we also have to prove that we can be part of the solution. It's an honor for me to be part of this group, creating the new Economic System 3.1 book. And I thank you for your attention.
And we thank you, Mr. van der Beken. And it was, yes, of course, highly interesting as all the speakers today. We get so much insight on all of this. And again, remember that you can write your questions in the chat. We have now only 2 more speakers before it's time for questions. And our next speaker will talk about the differences between the generations since 1945 till today, when we have a new generation. And we warmly welcome former rector Christian Babel, also founder of the Green Party. So welcome to the microphone, Mr. Babel.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to be able to talk about, I don't know if I am the other generation. I was invited to talk about the cultural and social situation as I experienced, as we in our generation of all of us experienced. And first I want to introduce myself. I'm a man of art and philosophy, and I was 20 years rector of the Green Academy. So my life is influenced by politics from very young to now. And because my father was the mayor of a village and the only discussion was on the table was about politics and about, in my statement in the book, I describe the world as by a term by McLuhan as a global village. And this is a term, word what was very actual in the 60s. And I think it became more and more real. And my own world is nearly the same, which was in the, when I was young, only the world got a little bit bigger. So I already was introduced by one of the founders of the Green Movement and the Green Party, and therefore I took this wonderful flower because this was our sign and our flag for the movement. I told you I'm an artist, and I painted this painting behind me, and this is a picture of the history of knowledge. And I'm very glad what Dr. Werner Strahan said and what Lord Hiram Rothschild said about the history and the mindset. And because I think that what we need now is to be conscious about the great history and how to come out of all these problems who are analyzed in this book. And as you see, you can see one of the goddesses of Egypt Anubis, and on the other side here, Tuat. And since months, I'm busy to analyze the religion and the culture of the Egypts, and there are a lot of ideas about it. And there, in this research, I found this famous story, or for me, very famous story, about a man called Josef, and he had a dream. And he dreamed that there were 2 fat cows and 7 starving cows. And he interpreted this dream that Egypt was getting very rich because they took the consequences. And I think dreaming is not only a question, a resource of artists, and is not only irrational, especially in this case, because the consequences were very good for Egypt. And I think creativity is something very needed in our time, because the complexity of informations and theories big, and to find out the solution, a consequence, is rather difficult. But I trust in brain, and that's what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to say something about the social situation because of COVID-19. I think that the society and the members of the societies are rather tired. There is some philosophers interpret this tiredness by a way to live, not only an individual case, but something what takes the whole society. And I'm very shocked somehow how it is possible to bring the society down on a level it is now. No marriages, no feasts, nothing. And I'm very, I hope it will go on and will be inspired by a new spirit. And about what kind of spirit that has to be, I think is rather good described in this book, where we were looking for a new economy. I want to say something about the newspapers and financial papers pronouncing a big crash about the financial system. And I think that the point of people who want to change the world, they often say that you have to take of the rich and to give it to the poor. But I think it's rather wrong, because we don't need the castles of the rich, but we have to build houses. And the companies who can do it and did it, they shouldn't be cut in their spirit. I hope my English is understandable, but it has to be freed, and the money what is needed has to be freed of some restrictive rules. I wanted to finish my statement. I had long discussions with Lord Hiram Rothschild, and one of the points where we're talking about was mindset. And he noticed and remembered me now about these discussions. And the problem was between mindset and the German word Weltgeist oder Weltbild. Yeah, and it's very difficult. For me, it was very difficult to come to a common start point and to create a new picture of the world, a new mindset. And then by these discussions, I came to the idea that we don't only need a mindset about our moral rules or social rules, but I think the most important thing in future is to connect these rules with the rules, how we create money and how we produce and how we consume the production and how we share all these things. So I wanted to sing a little song by John Lennon about Imagine, but I think everybody knows how it goes. And thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Mr. Wawel. I think that we are now falling behind a bit, but we are now going into our last speaker. And it's time to hear about the long-term African policy out of a Chinese point of view. That could be highly interesting. So the presentation is given by Ms. Lucy Lu Kwam, who is the president of Eureka Africa. And Ms. Kwam is the main representative of China in Africa, what I understand, with the company AMA International Group. She is acting as executive director and was achieving to be among the Fortune Global 500. Well, welcome, Ms. Lucy Lu Kwam. Floor is yours. Your microphone is not on, I believe.
Yeah, it's on now.
Ah, it's on now. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Please begin.
Okay. Actually, this topic is a big one, and I don't have enough time to give all the details. My base, I was born in China and grew up in China, but I have been in South Africa for more than 26 years. I have been to more than 30 African countries for so many years. So now I just want to give some brief introduction of the Chinese policy for, strengthening unity and cooperation with African countries has always been an important part of China's independent and peaceful foreign policy. China carries forward the tradition of Sino-African friendship since the new China was established in 1949, the 1st of October, 1949. China was established and developed new strategies with African countries that are politically equal and mutual trust, economically win-win, and cultural exchanges, and mature learning. Sincere and friendly treat each other as equal, adhere to the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, respect the independence choice of development path of African countries. 5 principles was started since early 50s by the Prime Minister Zhou Enlai at that time. So China support African countries to unite and strengthen themselves is very important, plays a very important role in that policy. China always support African countries to develop their economies build their countries and carry out various forms of cooperation in economic, trade, and social development with African countries to promote common development. Support each other with African countries, and to learn each other is always the policy between China and African countries. So, in terms of how China wants to cooperate with African countries, it's in the following aspects. First, the political aspect. Number one, they focus on high-level exchanges. And number two, this is for political. Number two, interactions with legislative bodies and party contacts and the consultation mechanism and international affairs cooperation and the local government exchanges. And the second aspect is the economic aspect. Number one, in trade. Number two, in investment. Number three, in financial cooperation. Number four, in agricultural cooperation. Number five, in infrastructure construction. Number six, in resource cooperation. Number seven, in tourism cooperation. Number eight, in debt relief. Number nine, in economic assistance. Number 10, in multilateral cooperation. And in third aspects, it's about education, science, culture, health, and society. And these were mainly in human resource development and education cooperation. Number two, in science and technology cooperation. Number three, in cultural exchange. Number four, in medical and health cooperation. Number five, in news cooperation. Number six, in administrative cooperation. Number seven, in consular cooperation. Number eight, in non-governmental exchanges. Number nine, environmental protection cooperation. Number 10, in disaster reduction, disaster relief, and humanitarian assistance. The fourth aspect is in terms of peace and security. Number one, it's about military cooperation. Number two, it's in conflict resolution and peacekeeping operations. Number three, in judicial and police cooperation. Number four, in non-traditional security. And in the other aspect, it's the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation and follow-up actions. Follow-up actions is very important actually, because it depends on the particulars of each type of cooperation. Each different ministries of Chinese government will participate. So under these different ministries, there are different kind of state-owned companies. And also those state-owned companies will also linked to private companies. And the other is also with some, non-governmental organizations or civil organizations. So I think I just gave some simple explanation of the main aspects. But if people somebody are interested, or if we have got time, we can talk in more details. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for concluding our speeches today. And we are now going to switch over to, I do have some assistants today. I believe I have Daniel Galili, Managing Director of Eureka HQ Brussels. Mr. Galili is a historian and a political scientist, and also lecturer in several universities. I say welcome, Daniel. And how are we doing with the question department from our audience?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, everyone, for participating and give us the honor in your presence and sharing us your views and the different aspects that you added to the book. I first like to thank Peter, Maya, and all the other authors for spending so much time to write this book, which everyone will believe will make a small history in the economic research fields. As you know, we worked a lot of time. We had a lot of efforts to finish and publish this book, and we are very excited to see it finally published. Right, so I followed the different feeds in our broadcast, and there are a lot of questions by listeners who are very interested what the people spoke. I will try to give all of them, and if time will not allow us, then we cannot give all of them. So I send an apology in advance to those who we cannot answer their questions. But I will begin. The first question is for Professor Peter Platzer. This is from Michael Richter from Hamburg. The question is, what were the circumstances that allowed Austria to see the need to combine between economy and ecology in the 1990s?
Greetings to Haber, Hamburg. My family has a lot of ties to Hamburg. My grandfather was the specialist for international forwarding from the Haber, Hamburg, then with the railroad to Austria and to the distribution to the different provinces in Austria. And you asking us what was the frame and the basis that Eco-Social Forum was built up in Austria. It was built up especially in the green heart of Austria, in Styria. In Styria, we have the highest percentage of forests of all provinces in Austria, totally 9. And everybody from us is knowing how green is Austria, the Alps, and the wonderful environment. And in Styria, the previous governor, Josef, was well educated and prepared to lead the country because his father was also governor. And as a scientific person educated on different universities, he was able to build up a basis to collect the intellectual people in Styria. And it was called the Modell Styria, das Modell Steiermark. And leading heads in this circle finally went to the political field. And Josef Riegler was the first one who was able to understand the importance of the harmonization between ecology and economy. This is the message.
All right, Daniel.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for this very comprehensive answer. The next question is for His Excellency Meyer Rothschild. This is from Julius Weinziel, I hope I said correctly, from Austria. In your opinion, how many years it will take to China to surpass the United States as the biggest economy in the world?
It would be my opinion that that already occurred about 4 months ago. So it would take 0 years because China has already surpassed the United States.
Okay, very well. The next question is for Mr. Guy van der Beken. And this question comes from Tatiana Ruska from Kaliningrad. Her question is, how many years do you think the European Union can achieve his environmental goal according to the new Green Deal?
I think since the Green Deal, then the new Green Deal, the estimated financial support they will give, I think, in my opinion, that they will have to spend 10 trillion over the coming 10 years.
Right, thank you, Guy. The next question is for Professor Peter Platzer again. This is from Shimon Aviv from Israel. The question is, if one country in Europe will get hyperinflation, will it affect the rest of Europe and how?
First of all, we have to understand that the euro as our common currency, it's only in 18 countries inside the 27 European countries. And if one country will have a problem like we have had in the financial crisis and debt crisis in 2008, created by Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, then Europe will be able to solve the Greek problem as we have had before. But the pandemic and the policy of the European Central Bank leads to different realities and will attack all countries inside the Eurozone. And as I said in my statement, if the policy will not be changed, because you cannot print money and enlarge the amount of the available euros without enlarging the production and without enlarging the service sector, then it will automatically lead to inflation. And this has a snowball effect because inflation leads finally to a superinflation. A superinflation will lead to a hyperinflation. And we all hope that the decision makers in the field of politics and inside the companies will protect us for such tremendous nightmares, which we have had in Europe, as I said, by the end of the First World War in some countries after the Second World War.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the answer. I think we all got a very good insight from it. Thank you for Shimon for asking. The next question is for Lucy. This is from Alexander Müller in Vienna. The question is as follows. Besides the African strategic paper, which other goal does China has in economic terms regarding other continents in the world? For example, the new Silk Road and such.
Okay, because Africa has got a very high population, but it's a very undeveloped. So that's why China has been focusing on the construction of Africa for long. But except for African continent, Southeast Asia and South America also are very close to the China's assistant policy. In Malaysia, in Indonesia, Pakistan, and Thailand, and also Vietnam as well. Actually, in some of those countries, China has lots of investors, both from the government and from private.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. We do appreciate that. Thank you so much for the for this explanation. The last question is for Peter, and I will elaborate and I will contribute, of course, to the answer, if I may, because it's an historic question, and I was involved in writing the historical overview chapter for the book. This is from Enrico Moarti, from Rome, from Italy, and the question is as follows: in your opinion, does human society learn from previous crisis, economic crisis in history, and how is the subjects in the book supposed to help us avoid such crisis in the future?
Daniel, I was understanding that you will give the answer because you wrote together with Dr. Strahalm this chapter, and
okay.
please take the floor.
I will let you add, and I will let you add later on. Okay, so in history, there were a number of economic crises that were occurred because of speculations and lack of regulations in financial terms. There were several different explanations why economic crisis happens. Some of them are internal explanations. Some of them are external explanations, such as wars, such as economic crisis in another country and such. And what we actually found out that during the continuation and possession and economic progress of the 20th century, the wall of regulations was actually reduced and declined, and it came to a peak with the economic crisis of course, in the United States of 2008, that were a result of basically, one can say, lack of risk management, meaning that people were investing in the United States without thinking what will happen if something will go wrong. They thought that the US government will always bail out investment banks, no matter what happened, no matter what the circumstances, and they felt free always, all the time, to invest in Americans' bonds, in Americans' housing bonds. And because they didn't do good risk management, as a result, because of the US Treasury decision not to bail out the Lehman Brothers banks, basically the entire world collapsed because all the money of all the banks in the world were invested in Lehman Brothers, at least most of the banks in the world. And what we are hoping to achieve by writing this book is to give a set of guidelines, a new approach, a new methodology that will help human society to try not to avoid the mistakes of the past, and maybe give them some sort of theory framework, economic framework that will help them to avoid different crises in the future, especially with this idea of the combination of technology, sustainable economy, and green values and green economic values. The combination of the three, we believe, could help the economy of the 21st century to flourish without having to worry about different crises that might occur. Peter, would you like to add?
Only one sentence. The bill for the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers in 2008, September 15th, was paid in Europe, because the rating of the big three, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's, were creating a different picture of the real situation of the financial instruments which were bought by European banks, especially the Deutsche Bank. And in 2001 in Austria, the Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Schüssel, was trying to launch an independent sovereign European rating agency, but he was not successfully in his goal. And so we have paid the bill, the invoice. But 14 years later, after the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, it's not understandable that we still not have in Europe an independent sovereign rating agency. And several chapters of our book are dedicated to implement a sovereign independent European rating agency. And as a sidestep, and therefore, thank you to Lucy Lu Quan speaking about China's policy in Africa, the African Rating Agency, which is one of our leading projects and will help Africa to have better access to the international capital markets.
Thank you, Peter. We have one last question. One last question, please.
Yeah, I sent in a couple of questions and you haven't mentioned them, and I don't know if
I'm sorry, I didn't receive the questions. Okay, but you can ask them.
I don't understand because I've seen them on the chat and so on. But what I like to give to you as a comment is that very often we discuss the problems or the challenges for society as if it is public attitudes. And in some cases, you're also bringing up whether it's systems that are not in existence or if they are incorrectly displayed. But what I find when I look historically, and I have given out a book right now that is called the Art of Science, the Art of Leadership. And that's a scientific study based on what is science in leadership and behavior attitudes. And then you end up with human beings, special people. It can be a Thatcher, it can be a Hitler, it can be somebody in the private sector that creates something. And the importance of those individuals overtake the importance of the attitude, and the attitude is created by these people. So I'm just saying, just as a reflection, I think your book will be extremely important, and I will read it definitely, and so on, and I will learn a lot from reading this book. But you should not underestimate the importance of exceptional individuals in society, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And those are the Bill Gates or those kind of guys, but it's also the politicians. And,
did you have a question for
general? Yep.
Was there also a question for any one of the speakers, Ulf?
No, it's just a reflection.
It's just a reflection. Okay, thank you very much, Ulf.
And I would like to give my apologies. The reason that I didn't vote that as a question because again it was a comment, not a question. So I do apologize, but I think we got it to heart. Thank you so much for your comment. It was very nice of you. We have two more questions. One is for Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
Lucy, are you with us? Yes.
Yes. I just charged my phone.
Yes. Okay. One is from Philip Nelson from Iceland. He's asking, what is China's policy in the next few years regarding cryptocurrency, regarding Bitcoin? Will they see it as a value to regular currency, or they see it as something better and they will give it a priority? It depends. How does China relate to the phenomenon of cryptocurrency and Bitcoins?
Sorry, can you repeat your question, please? I missed it. Missed a little bit.
Okay, I will repeat it again. What is China's policy in the present and in the next few years regarding cryptocurrency, regarding Bitcoins? Do they see it as something that is value to in terms of use, of course, in terms of banks use trade and such, do they see it something as equal to regular currency, or do they see it as something that's better, that they prefer to use? What is the official policy of the Chinese government, Communist Party, and the Chinese central banks?
Okay. Actually, you see for so many years, all the value for trading, for projects are calculated based on US dollars. And since a couple of years ago, Chinese Reserve Banks started a kind of new RMB. RMB is Chinese money, Chinese currency. It's called international RMB or overseas RMB. So in Hong Kong or in some other countries, you can open an international RMB bank account. So you can deposit your RMB there. You can also do settlement of tradings or project with RMB. So the Chinese Reserve Bank actually wants to get RMB more and more international, more and more, play more and more important role in the international project and tradings.
May I can add?
Yes.
No, I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, okay.
I have only one understanding from my communication with you in the past. And if you allow me, I want to add 2 sentences. I'm thinking China is completely able to see that the United States will be challenged if the petrodollar will lose their importance. And exactly the cryptocurrencies are the tool for China to undermine the importance of the petrodollars. And we were speaking about this in regard to the Sinorage capital, where the United States still remaining on their position. And Lord Rothschild told us, practically speaking, they lost their position as the leader in economic terms. But what I want to say with Ethereum, for example, China is completely investing in this market to develop one cryptocurrency as a counterpart to the petrodollar. And this I only want to add, and sorry for the interruption.
Okay, no problem. The reason is that, the exchange rate between RMB and the US dollars has changed quite a lot in the past, let me say, 30 years after China started the reform. Remember in early 90s, Chinese RMB to US dollars used to be 3 point something. And suddenly it became 6 point something. And then it goes to, it drops to 8 point something. But now it's around 7. So in order, this figure actually is quite big, because if you have got some balance in the bank account, if this exchange changes, the value changes quite a lot. So this is one aspect. The other very important aspect is that China is developing. For the past 40 years, China has changed quite a lot, is developing a great deal. It doesn't matter other countries, including the United States, develop or not. China wants to develop. China, I don't think China aimed to, to pass by the United States of America. That's not the purpose.
And you think the use of cryptocurrency can help China achieve this goal?
Sorry?
Do you think the banking use of cryptocurrency can help China to achieve this goal?
I don't think so. It's not, that is actually it's only one of the tools. So it plays some role in the whole process. Just plays some role.
Thank you for that answer.
Thank you,
We're gonna go over to you, Daniel.
Gustav. We have one last questions.
Very good.
And I know that there are more people that want to ask questions, but I'm sorry we are very short on time. One last question, please, that was written in the chat from Africa. Peter did mention the fact that one of the conclusions in the book is the creation of an African rating agency. And we have a question from Mark from Ghana. He is asking Lucy, and then maybe Peter can add, how can a fair credit rating for African countries can help economic growth for the African continent and can ease their access to the financial global market and to the capital market? Okay, so Lucy will give us the first question, the first answer, and then Peter can add.
Okay.
And then I think we can conclude.
Okay. I know in China, lots of African people are importing something from China to African countries. That is their private actions. And also China government and African government also have got lots of corporations. But personally, I think private people and private companies can play a very important role if they do the right thing. Because there are 55 countries in Africa. China government cannot do equally with each single African countries because the size, the financial situation, the need, the marketing, the economic differences are so different in each single African countries. For example, Congo DRC and Congo Kinshasa. Congo DRC has got about 100 million people, but Congo Kinshasa only more than 3 million. So it's so different. And the minerals as well. Different minerals, especially metals in DRC, but in Brazzaville, only the main mineral is crude oil. So it's very, very different. In this regard, I don't think China government can play a very important role to identify very clearly of each single country. For example, Ghana. Ghana is very rich in gold. I know there is a great deal of need of gold in China and in Hong Kong, in mainland China and in Hong Kong. So some people, some Chinese people go to Ghana to do mining, some legal, some illegal. Ghana government can actually make a systematic regulations to declare, to give allowance or license to those people how to do it, to make it a systematic operation.
Sorry for interrupting, Lucy. I'm just curious regarding your answer. How do you think that a rating, a fair credit rating, can help African companies to get involved in different trade with Chinese companies?
That's a very good question, actually, Daniel. Rating in Africa, actually, it has to be done every year. And, now the rating is not very good for African countries. Mm-hmm. Some rating doesn't really reflect the situation, the actual situation in Africa. these years, the rating for South Africa has been dropping quite a lot. It has some reason, but it doesn't reflect the real situation.
Yes,
So
I also believe the same thing. I believe that when you have American companies doing rating, they simply reflect the American situation on the rest of the world, and it's not the same market, it's not the same economy, it's not the same circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. Yes, Peter, would you like to add something?
Yes, that we are glad having Lucy on board, but because she was building up our channel of the African Rating Agency to the BBC, to the People's Bank in China. And together with the European Central Bank and together with the African Union and the signed strategic alliance with the African Financial Authority, we will be strong enough in Africa to challenge the monopoly of Fitch, Standard & Poor and Moody's. And in this way, China is also important for us. This is what I want to add. And Mrs. Lucy Luquan is supporting our idea and bring us on the right table to discuss our offer and possibilities in this regard.
Indeed. Thank you, Peter, for this answer. And I would like to say again, final note, we all work very hard for this book for a lot of years to give some sort of scientific background for our initiatives of expanding credit ranking and to help many more other continents and companies in the world get access to the global financial market. And a lot of people, like Peter used to say a lot of people are saying we can do this or that, but this book actually gives a scientific background to the projects that could change and make history in the world economy. And gentlemen, I think we do with this book, we are making history also on practical terms and also on the scholarly field in terms of economics. Okay, so I do apologize for all the other people that ask questions. We have many more other questions, but unfortunately we have to conclude. Gustaf, would you like to give a final note?
Well, it's been extremely interesting to listen to all the very knowledgeable speakers, and I realized that the questions could continue for days because this is a subject that is so large, and we will continue to discuss this, and the book will be continue to be discussed, and I believe for years to come. And it will be a book that we will also find in the universities and so forth. So this is going to be something historical that we are now looking at. So this is extremely, extremely interesting. And it's sad that we can't continue, but we need to end this for today. And we will look upon the opportunities to see what we can do in the future, maybe having discussions about the book. So we will see where that takes us. I like to say that also inform you that we will invite you, as I understood, to Sidonia Business Club, where more information will be posted about when and how you will be able to buy this book, of course, to a reduced price. That's a must. And well, actually, since time is flying, really, Sidonia Business Club, TNOC, would love to just say thank you to all our distinguished speakers of today, to Eureka for making all of this possible, plus also a special thank you to all of you that's been listening today and will be listening in the future, since this has been recorded as well. So thank you ever so much for all your participation in today's webinar. And that is what I have to say. Peter, do you want to end with a few words, please?
I only want to say thank you for your nice course through the webinar. You gave us orientation through all the different matters. And finally, I want to say that in 1-2 days, our host in Israel, Company 33, and special thanks to Ariel Quet. We will have a nice video as a documentation to this webinar, and everybody can feel themselves free to download it on our platform. This is the only thing which I want to add, and especially also I have to say thank you for all the people who made this webinar in real, and we are hoping to continue in the right direction to inspire people to be with us.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.